Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Woon, and welcome back to the YMyHealth podcast. Today, we are joined by Sri. She is the creator and driving force behind the blog Vegetarian Wellness. She started the blog to share a deep passion for health and food, and it's not just for vegetarians or vegans, but anybody who wants easy, delicious, nutritious meals. And what makes her work stand out is her approachable and realistic approach. Recipes that fit right into your everyday life, even if you're juggling something like a busy job or trying to eat well on a budget. And for our conversation today, she's going to help us dig into how she balances flavor, nutrition, simplicity, and some little lazy girl tricks to making vegetarianism doable and what she's learned over the way. So, welcome to the podcast, Shri.
Hi, Julie. I'm Shri. Hi, everyone. My blog is called Vegetarian Wellness, and thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk about something very close to my heart. Um, and this is a very interesting topic and something that I have worked on for many, many years. So I'm very excited to be here and talk about it.
Excellent. Yeah, we're so grateful to have you. And maybe we can just start off by talking about what first drew you to vegetarian eating and how did this evolve into starting the blog?
I became a vegetarian at a very young age because meat never really appealed to me. The texture, the smell, none of that really felt right. And I witnessed actually animals being butchered live multiple times in my life growing up. So that really had an impact as well. So one day I just decided, you know what, I never enjoyed this. And I've seen how, animals feel so anxious and so scared when they go through this process. I've decided, I'm just going to turn into a vegetarian and I'm going to do this. So that's how I made the decision and I never looked back.
Yeah. And when did you decide that you would start the blog, start putting out recipes, and why did you want to do that?
So I was always very passionate about food. I always believed in, you become what you eat, kind of a, mindset. But also I always believed in nourishing the body with the food that you're eating. And it's also part of my family. They're also very health conscious. My grandma was very health conscious. She ate great food. And she always believed in making food from scratch and things like that. So, that really got me into, being a vegetarian. But at the same time, I've seen people who struggle to be vegetarian. They struggle to cook vegetarian meals. I've always had friends who say, I don't have time to cook. And I'm like, it's very easy. It doesn't really take that long to cook. There are easiest things that you can put together or make really quickly. That's good for you. But I've seen even I have vegetarian friends who actually feel sometimes cooking is hard, and this is where and COVID happened. I had we were all home, and that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this time that I get back in a day to create something for others. So that's how I started it.
Awesome. And looking back, what did early attempts at vegetarianism um, look like for you? Was it, in kind of like an easy start, or did you have challenges along the way?
It was not very easy, to simply put it, because when you first start, you're always feel like you're restricted. And that was like the biggest thing for anybody, even for me. Um, I've grew up in a family where we make vegetarian meals every day. There's meat, but there's also vegetarian meals. But even growing up with that kind of culture, it was still hard to find, especially when you go out and you're trying to live on your own. It gets very hard, creating things on your own. So looking back, I would feel like, and initially there's also this stigma, right? Like when you turn vegetarian, you feel embarrassed to tell people, hey, I'm vegetarian, I eat only this. And there's that feeling of judgment that you think, like, people are going to pass on you. So those were some of the things that I think I initially kind of struggled with. But once I learned that it's really not that complicated, it's all in, a lot of it is in your head, right? Like the judgment and the questions, people come from not really judgment, it's because they don't know, they're just curious. And this is where people ask you questions, and that's okay. Right. So when I understood that, and most people are accommodating when you tell them, right? I've
Mhm.
seen in my life 80 to 90%, which is, I think, is very high. People are accommodating when you tell them what your preference of food is. So I think that initial stigma is what people always get wrong. Like when they go out, when they suddenly turn into vegetarian and they go out with friends or they go out with coworkers, they feel embarrassment. The embarrassment is the first thing. I think that comes out. And once we get over that, I think it becomes easier.
Yeah. I know that I'm also vegetarian. It's been about 6 or 7-ish years now, and it was one of those things where, the initial time, like, going home for the holidays and being like, "Hey, like, I'm only gonna be eating specific things, but I can, like, bring stuff as well, and, like, you don't have to, like, work around me or worry about me, whatnot." You know, it is a little bit, uh I guess it can be a little bit nerve-wracking to, like, have to start those conversations, at least for first time, just because, like you said, it can feel very awkward.
Yeah.
But I've never had any issues, like you said as well, with having, um, people be open and accommodating, which is great. Um, I think too, yeah, that first introduction, that first, few months, especially when you're trying to figure out what does this look like in a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis is I think something that can be mentally, a barrier for some people, so I'm curious, for people who are maybe interested in testing out being
Yeah.
vegetarian, what does a realistic week of eating look like? I think there's a lot of videos and social stuff about what I eat in a week or what I eat in a day that's vegetarian, but, um, maybe they're, like, a little played up for the camera, so I'm curious to see what it looks like for you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. For me, I feel like a realistic week for me usually looks very simple and fast, right? Nothing Instagram perfect, nothing's beautifully laid out, none of that, right? Most nights or most days it's quick meals. When I say quick meals, it's like a warm lentils, beans, legumes, a quick stir fry vegetable, or like a sheet pan roasted veggies. I always have when I'm making meals, I always think about the macros, like they say, right? What am I going to have for the protein? What am I going to have for the fiber? What am I going to have for the carbs? So when I make quick meals, I make sure that all these three are included in them. So for me, quick lentils, legumes, beans, stew that I can put in a pressure cooker and, do minimal prep work. Usually I don't really have like a lot of time to be in the kitchen while I'm cooking. So I take like 5 to 10 minutes in the kitchen to put it up. Put it in the pressure cooker, let it do its job and leave, and then, turn it off, cool it down. And then I make one stir fry, at least one vegetable, right? So
Mhm.
it could be a quick roasted vegetable, you know, preheat the oven, prep your veggies, put it in the oven and let it do its job. All you have to do is take it out and that's it. And, put it on your plate and eat it. And for carbs, I try to go with quinoa, um, and, maybe whole wheat bread, sourdough, rice, or like warm breads, like these kind of things. These are the simplest meals. This is usually my go-to meals in the week. And I kind of rotate the veggies and rotate the type of lentils I'm eating, beans or legumes, whatever I'm eating, I'm rotating this. But the recipe, literally, it's always the same. You can switch up 1 to 2 spices here and there. Small things, small changes make big difference, but it's literally the same things almost every day in different form. But it's always the same thing that
Yeah.
happens behind Instagram.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you have a favorite, like, quick recipe or, like, go-to from the blog that you feel like people often, like, reach out for?
Yes. So my go-to is like a quick lentil dish. I also have a beet salad that is one of the most popular recipe on my blog. The beet salad gets so much attention all the time without me doing anything. It's a very simple salad. All you have to do is roast your, beets, put them in the oven and, cut them up and beautifully arrange and eat. It's a simple salad that you can make very quickly without spending too much time in the kitchen. There's also lentils, like I said, dal lentils is one of my favorite, and it's the most easiest thing to make. Um, that and also I have a roasted vegetable dish with like tofu. These three are like my top recipes, go-to recipes that are quick to make, and you can
Yeah,
literally change them, modify them to your liking, and they still will turn out delicious. So it will, they all feel like something that you're ordering from a restaurant, but without sacrificing on the quality of food that you're eating. So
yeah, that's perfect. I think a lot of people assume that either it's gonna be hard to do or that the food's gonna be, like, boring and less flavorful because you don't have meat in it, and yeah, it's just not the case. I think, like, you can spice it like any other food, you add different flavors, and, like, they can be really delicious, complex dishes, or like you said, they can be easy, quick to make when you're, either just not feeling like putting in a ton of effort to cooking or you don't have a lot of time, which I think is many, many people these days find themselves in those circumstances.
yes, yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And Uber and I think Grubhub has so much. I mean, it's exploded so much that everybody has ordering at their, at in their hands, right? You can just order food. But
Mhm.
what they forget is like ordering food still takes half an hour for the food to come into your house. In that half an hour, you can
Yeah.
actually make your own meal and eat by the time it gets delivered. Like I have done it once. Like I ordered food because I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. I'll just order something. And then I was like, I can't wait. I have to make something. And I did make it. Actually made my food was ready before the order came in. So, you know, um
Yeah,
it's actually people don't think about it, but it's actually so easy and faster to cook at home than order food.
absolutely. And you've already talked a little bit about some of your kind of tricks, but curious what you would say, um, maybe your, like, top 3 hacks are for doing something that is quick but doesn't sacrifice flavor and nutrition. I know you mentioned you've kind of got this formula that you follow, but any other tips or tricks?
So one of the most interesting, or this is something that I developed over time, right? When I go grocery shopping, I envision my plate when I'm shopping for ingredients. So when I envision a plate and I'm thinking, what goes with this or what should I put in this? That's when I think about it like that, it makes it easier for me to shop and be conscious about what I am buying. That means like what I'm buying is what I'm bringing into my house, and that's what I will be cooking. So it's that consciousness is what really really helps. The shopping is where it starts first. And then I also have spices. I feel like we have so many spices available these days. I think we should all invest in them. Like simple things like garlic, cumin, there's paprika. There's so many different types of paprikas from different countries, and each one comes with like different flavors. Turmeric, chili powder. you know, oregano, basil, dried basil. Like I always have dried versions of these always handy. That way, whatever I'm making, I just add a little bit. I mean, let's say I don't have a recipe, right? I don't know what I'm making. Just add a little bit of oil, like olive oil, um, spices to your veggies. Just put them all together, roast them or stir fry them. They will taste delicious. They are simple, easy to follow, and quick to make. These are something that I don't compromise on, right? Like the spices have to be there, but nobody likes bland food. And especially vegetables, if you eat them bland, they are the least interesting foods that you want to actually put into your body, right? So the spices makes them very interesting. So the hacks is to be conscious about, when you go grocery shopping and envision a plate when you're buying. And the next is like, spices, invest in your spices. Also frozen veggies. Like I don't have a ton of frozen veggies, but I always have frozen peas, spinach, broccoli, um so that, like, if I don't really even have time to cut my vegetables, I just take this bag and put them in there, and it's done. So the frozen ones, and if possible, I will always suggest to buy organic, because they have least amount of preservatives and they're least processed, so you know what you're putting into your body. So um, just these three tricks: spices, conscious shopping, and keep frozen uh, vegetables, and also canned beans, canned chickpeas, canned kidney beans, red beans, black beans, white beans. I have tons of dried beans. I also have tons of canned beans, just so that there are times that even those cooking these in the pressure cooker still doesn't take time. There are still days where we don't feel like doing that. So I think that's when it really helps to have these canned versions available and some frozen veggies available. That makes it easier, everyday life easier.
Yeah. Do you have any other shortcuts that you use? I know I'll sometimes have, like, rice either prepped or, like, ready rice on hand as, like, something that's already kind of ready. I do the same thing with frozen vegetables and the canned veggies. I feel like that's great. Anything else that you found is helpful to just, like, have ready or to make things a little bit quicker?
I also have, we get this frozen um, whole wheat flatbreads that they're not cooked. They're not
Mhm.
cooked. So they come frozen. So all you do is take them out, freshly make them, because to make like tortillas, right? Whole wheat tortillas, it takes forever. It takes a lot
Yeah.
of prep work. It you know. So what I do is I buy these frozen versions, and then I just quickly heat them up on the stove and make them, and I have something ready for like carbs. And it's easier when you have like canned beans or canned anything, right? Having these pre-cooked, they're not pre-cooked, they're uncooked versions of tortillas, where you can just
Mhm.
heat them up, put some cheese on, or put some kind of condiment on it, some lettuce, tomatoes, simple things that can make quick sandwich or a wrap. I always have sourdough in my bread. I make my own sourdough, so I always have at least one to two different types of breads. I put it in the fridge. I bake them weekly, and they stay fresh for a week in the fridge. So I have that. For rice, I don't usually make rice ahead of time. Sometimes I have leftovers that I use. But I think having some kind of, healthier version of the carbs in your fridge really helps, because there are certain days when you're hungry and you can't wait. And you can just quickly grab this, toast it up, and, put a slice of cheese, tomato, and, some kind of condiment like a green chutney or a pesto or things like that, and you have a nourishing meal ready to eat.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people encounter when they're trying to go vegetarian?
Oh, this is a very good one because I've seen so many. Um, especially I've seen my friends, right? Like they go vegetarian, and they make this change overnight. Like suddenly they make this shift that, okay, from tomorrow I'm a vegetarian. And what this does is this creates this overwhelming feeling that small mistakes, or when you give up, when you're craving for something, you go eat it, you feel like, oh my God, you have not followed through. So a lot of people end up giving up too quickly because they eliminated the food they love so much so quickly that they end up going back and to their regular schedule, right? I think that's one of the biggest thing, um, mistake that people do when they become vegetarian, vegan, right? Don't try to run a marathon just by signing up for this weekend. You cannot run a marathon, in 5 days or 2 days. You cannot do that. It's a long run. You have to practice. You have to start slow. You have to go a block first, 2 blocks second, right? Like that's how you train. So same thing as a vegetarian. Like you can't start overnight. You have to be slow. Maybe one day a week you become a vegetarian. Only one day a week, you make a day, you choose a day, you stick with it, and you say, okay, today is the day I'm going to cook vegetarian every week, right? You choose a day and you stick to it, and you make only vegetarian dishes that particular day only. And you can see how that turns out, right? How easy, how difficult. You learn through that. And you can make it exciting, right? Because you have one day and you can look forward to make something different. That will keep it exciting. And you can gradually increase, um, like day by day. You can add another day. Or you can make the decision like, okay, every day maybe I can be a vegetarian, but every day I will make one vegetarian dish that I'm gonna eat. Whatever it is, in whatever form it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat at least one vegetarian dish. So I think these small changes will make big difference in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think trying to, for lack of a better term, like quit something cold turkey is always very difficult. I know one of the things that, I mean, whether it was this or another habit, is just like also rather than looking at something as like taking it away, instead you're looking at it as like adding something. So it's not taking away a meal with meat in it. It's adding a vegetarian meal to my week. And like going about that, I think has always helped me slowly but surely integrate a new habit into my life. So I love that. I feel like you're so right. You don't have to do it all at once by any means.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
have you ever, I know you mentioned some of your friends have done, gone vegetarian or started incorporating more vegetarian meals into their lifestyle. Do you ever feel like you've coached people who have maybe said that they've failed, if they're trying to eat more plant-based and then they have meat with a meal?
Yes, definitely. So I've like I said, right? I've met so many people who have taken up veganism overnight, and they they given up the foods that they love so much, that they gave up being a vegan, right? But I this is where I try to talk to a lot of my friends and people I know, or people sometimes they come and say, hey, how hard is it to be a vegetarian? I tried so many times, I can't seem to get it right. So this is where I tell them, like, don't do things suddenly, right? Like we have to develop habits. Anything is a habit. Being a vegetarian is also kind of a habit. It's something new, and if you're not very familiar with it, you have to develop the habit over time. So start slow. Start low. Make one choice of, one day, like I said, one day, 2 days, kind of a thing. And be conscious about talking to people about it. I feel like one of the main thing is people feel some way when they have to mention that they're vegetarian, or people might be not accommodating, or people might feel some way. But most of the time it's not. I mean, it all comes, like, once you're used to, once you know what it is, people are not really judgmental. They're like, okay, she prefers this, or they're more accommodating. So I feel like this is where people need to understand that don't go cold turkey overnight on foods that you love. you can still eat them in moderation, right? Like, but at the same time, incorporate other things that makes life more nourishing for your body and for yourself. I've heard people, including my family, right? They when they used to eat, uh, back in the day, they used to eat a lot of red meat. But now they made this conscious decision that they only eat meat like once a week, right? And my family tells me like, oh, we change, we see so much difference in, how we feel when we eat meat versus when we don't eat meat. So it made a big difference. So this is what I tell, like, slow and steady wins the race. um
Yeah,
yeah, that's how I coach people. That's what I tell people, like small things. And like I said, spices is also another thing, and don't be intimidated. One thing I tell them, like,
mhm,
don't be intimidated. It's really not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. It's training our brain is what's the most difficult part of this whole process. It's us.
yeah,
We need to train ourselves. Our mind is, self-coaching, talking to ourselves about, what's right for us, our body. And that really makes a big difference in the long run.
totally. I know another kind of circumstance that I think people get nervous about is when maybe they're traveling or they have to like pack lunch for work or, something along those lines. How do you, or what would your recommendation be for people if they're trying to prep for something in advance where they know, you know, I may or may not have as easy of a time getting to vegetarian food as I would have when I'm just in the comfort of my own home?
Um, so there are two different things, like going to work versus traveling. When you're going to work, you could do quick things like, you can prepare the before night, right? Like, for example, if you're trying to make breakfast, make something like overnight oats is super easy to eat in the morning. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is take it out and, eat it. Next thing is pre-cooking your quinoa, whatever your carbs are. Quinoa, or if you like tortillas or some kind of bread, just try to choose breads which have least amount of ingredients. Ezekiel is one of the great ones. It has like 5 or 6 ingredients. It's all natural. It doesn't have preservatives. And it has 5 grams of protein per one slice, which is really great. So keeping them handy at home really helps, or pre-cooking the previous night really helps. And also, if you want to have meals that you want to make fresh every night, for work, um, pre-cut vegetables. I think that saves so much time, right? That itself takes a lot. I feel like the most of the cooking is all about the prepping, the cutting vegetables. Instead of making meals for the whole week, which seems like a trend these days, right? People love making week batch of food ahead. Instead, make batches of vegetables. Like, don't cook them, just keep them handy, cut them all up, slice them, whatever you want to eat for the week, prepare them over the weekend. That way you can quickly toss them in a pan, add some spices, and you have fresh cooked meals ready every day. So that's something for, people. It's easier to make them, the previous night and take them in the morning for lunch. So it gets easier that way. But when you're traveling, um also, like, I've traveled a lot, right? And I've seen even places like Europe, or countries where they don't eat a lot of vegetables. You always find something like a egg salad sandwich, um, or a cheese sandwich. But they also have a big side of salads that are available. If you're dining at a fancy restaurant, for example, you just have to tell them, hey, I'm a vegetarian. What can you make for me? A lot of
Mhm.
times what we do when we're traveling, we see the menu and we're like, they don't have anything vegetarian, so they don't have anything for me here. That's such a old fashioned way of thinking, because most of the time when you go to a restaurant and tell them, hey, I see you don't have any options here, I'm a vegetarian, is there something that you can do, like a side dish, a side of vegetables? Or they always have something that they can make for you. And I have not I have not had one incident where I couldn't get a vegetarian meal. I've dined at like Michelin restaurants, which is like in Europe where there's like heavy meat, and there are countries where they eat only meat. But even at these restaurants, if you tell them ahead that you're a vegetarian, and your food choices or um, preferences that you have, they always make something for you. So don't always get intimidated just by the menu, because restaurants accommodate. You just have to ask. I think that's the biggest thing. You have to ask.
Are there any other, like, misconceptions about being vegetarian that you commonly hear that you think should be addressed?
So the most, I'm sure, like every vegetarian vegan who turns into a vegetarian vegan, they always hear this. What about protein? What about protein? Like, you don't get enough protein. You don't, that's like the one of the biggest thing I keep hearing. And as I said, right, lentils, legumes, beans, all of these have proteins, right? All of these have proteins. Like you don't, and tofu, like great sources of proteins. Once you have once you incorporate these kinds of foods um, into your life, you don't need to worry about protein specifically, because all of these have protein. Even spinach is a good source of protein. Broccoli has protein. Even certain vegetables also have protein, which I don't think people know. But you know, that's the biggest misconception. They don't eat enough protein, but no, but we do. There is protein in a lot of different things. So every meal we eat has protein in it. All the lentils, legumes, beans, the vegetables, they all have protein. So it's not like we are malnourished in terms of protein. We're not. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing that people worry about turning into vegetarians, that they will not get enough protein. But you really shouldn't be worrying so much. Once you incorporate the right kinds of things into your life, it's really easy. It's not very difficult.
Yeah, definitely feel like there was a mental switch of, like, thinking about where sources of protein come from for sure, because it's very we're raised and we're, uh, raised knowing or thinking like, "Okay, meat equals protein," even though that's not, mutually exclusive to have that. Um, the other thing that I think I hear a lot, or that I think people assume a lot, is like, just because you're vegetarian means you're very healthy, even though you could be
True.
vegetarian and eating lots and lots of junk food as well.
That is so true. Okay, yes, that's absolutely right. Like just because you're a vegetarian doesn't mean you're healthy. Because some people, for example, eat too much of one food, or being a vegetarian, you can eat only chips all day, right? You can only
Right.
eat junk food all day. It's all vegetarian, but you're not healthy because you're not eating the right kinds of food. So not being a vegetarian doesn't mean that you're healthy, because I'm originally from India, right? Like there's
Mhm.
large population of people who are vegetarians. Do you think all of these people are healthy? No, because they don't eat the right kinds of food. They have, sometimes you could end up adding too much processed food, like fried food and things like that. Too much fats. I mean, you have to always know this. Like this is a thing people think, oh, this is so good for you. You can eat a lot of it, but you can't. you know like olive oil or ghee, right? They're good source of fats. Even avocado, good source of fat. But if you eat too much of it, it's not good for you. Everything in moderation, even vegetables, processed food, or fats, good fats, even everything has to have certain moderation in life. Just because you're a vegetarian doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy.
Yeah. Um, Another thing that I think I hear a lot lately, vegetarian or not, is about, you know, the prices of groceries going up. And I'm curious if, for somebody who's looking to make this switch, but maybe they're on a budget. Do you have recommendations of like affordable ways to approach being vegetarian?
I think I would suggest to go for the easy vegetables, carrots, beets. I know a lot of people don't like beets, but they're so cheap and so easy to make and so delicious and so good for you. Good source of iron too. Add leafy vegetables. If you think like getting fresh vegetables is getting expensive, go for the frozen ones. They're even cheaper compared to the fresh ones, so you can stock up on the cheaper versions by the frozen versions, um, by keeping them handy. That way you're not spending a lot of money, but also potatoes are still, you know even if the prices are going up. Trust me, I know, like when I go grocery shopping, I'm like, I used to spend $100, now I have to spend $150. So it's there's a big price difference. But I think making small changes, like switching, if some vegetables suddenly you see a big price increase, go for the frozen one instead, because it will be still relatively be um, cheaper compared to the fresh ones. So that's what I would suggest. Like, and also get bulk stuff. For example, the lentils, and you can get bulk lentils. Like, if you go to an Indian store, or Costco, I think Costco has a lot of them too. They get like big bags of lentils, which are like $2-3. You get a big bag. That's good for like a month. So you're making nutritious meals in fractions of dollars, like less than a dollar every meal, and you can eat them for a month. So
Yeah.
when you're buying, don't go to like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's to buy lentils and or legumes or rice. Don't buy in Trader Joe's. And I mean, I love both of them, but I suggest go for more like the ball store, like an ethnic store where where this concentration of people, a lot of these, they tend to be more cheaper. um so I would suggest to go shop at ethnic stores, versus buying at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, especially when it comes to lentils, legumes, beans, and things like that, because you can bulk shop them and make meals at very low cost.
Yeah. If someone wants to try, you know, maybe not cold turkey like we said, but they wanted to do an experiment with vegetarianism this week, are there one or two recipes or resources that you would say are a good starting point for beginners?
Yes, I suggest everybody who turns to a vegetarian, I think they should learn how to make a simple lentil dish and a simple stir fry. Whether you're stir frying on the stove or in the oven, you should know the basics of making a stir fry and the lentils, because these two will be the key that you can, because there's so many different types of lentils, right? You can switch the lentil every day of the week. You don't even have to repeat the same lentil every day. So keeping them handy and knowing how to make lentils, you will literally can repeat the same thing every day, but still feel like having a different meal every day. Just having that, know how to cook lentils, know how to make a quick stir fry, or a roasted veggie. I think these two simple recipes will take you a long way, very long way.
Awesome. Well, this has been so great. I wanted to see, is there anything I didn't ask you that you feel like we should address before we wrap up?
I think we covered most everything.
Well, yeah, I think this has been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. If our listeners want to learn more about you, find more recipes, where can they find and follow you, whether that's the blog or your socials?
I have a blog which is called vegetarianwellness.com. So it's spelled a little different. It's called VEG. There's an E missing. It's kind of like a take between a vegetarian and a vegan. So
Mm.
it's vegetarian wellness without the E after the G, .com. That's my blog. But you can also find me on Instagram. I think even till today, when you search vegetarian, I'm one of the top recommended people on there. So you'll find me easily in there. I have recipes. I also keep posting simple ideas every here and there on my stories, on how to cook certain vegetables, how to incorporate, how to make the easiest stuff. So you'll find a lot of them on my stories, on my blog, and on my Instagram itself. So an easy way to find recipes.
Great. Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for being on the podcast. And for those listening, if you've liked today's episode, please like, subscribe, comment, leave a review. We love to hear from you. And we also love to hear any other topics that you'd be interested in having us cover. But otherwise, Sri, thank you so much for being here. And we will see everybody next time.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I really enjoyed this conversation.